Thank you for tuning in to the Catch a Lift Fund's Coach's Corner podcast. We hope you enjoy today's episode and will consider supporting the Catch a Lift Fund and the veterans we serve. Visit our website for more information about our programs at catchaliftfund.org. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis or suicidal thoughts, please call 988 or the Veterans Crisis Line 988, followed immediately by the number 1. The views and opinions expressed during the Coach's Corner podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the Catch a Lift Fund. The Catch a Lift Fund does not verify or warrant the truth or accuracy of statements made during the podcast, and statements therein are not to be construed as an official policy or position of the Catch a Lift Fund. This podcast is provided for informational purposes only, and nothing herein should be construed as health, medical, or other professional advice. The Coach's Corner is a place for veterans to connect, heal, and share their stories. I'm Melissa Luke, the host of the Coach's Corner podcast. I am a U.S. Army Iraq War veteran, coach, and program director for the Catch a Lift Fund. The Coach's Corner is sponsored by ID Technologies. Welcome to this week's episode of the Coach's Corner. I'm excited to welcome back Ken Fontenot to today's show. Ken is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, Cal veteran athlete, and new state legislator for North Carolina. We highlighted Ken's service in episode 102. Check out that episode to hear more about Ken's service to our great country. Today we'll be discussing Ken's recent run for office in North Carolina. Welcome to this week's episode of the Coach's Corner. Ken, welcome back. Thanks for taking some time with us today.
Hey, Melissa, it's good to be back, and thank you for having me on it again.
Always such a fun time getting to talk with you, Ken. Let's jump right into it. Ken, what drove you to run for office?
I was considering running for office. The thing I remember most clearly was going to Afghanistan in 2012. And then I always heard the horror stories of the rules of engagement in Vietnam from my uncle and other people who fought in that era. And then, it was so surreal that when I finally got there, I was getting those same rules that just didn't make sense. And I clearly saw that, policy drives insanity in times. So I felt like if there's any perspective our nation needed, it was a veteran perspective, because we are often on the end of policy decisions where we see directly the impact of what somebody was thinking in Washington or wherever else. So I felt like my perspective, along with many other veterans, was absolutely needed in that sphere.
Ken, so fast forwarding here, what was it like for you to get a bid from a party that you weren't affiliated with?
It was several things. First, it was like I considered it providential because, I guess I always had like a leaning toward just being interested in political affairs, though I never got involved. Most I ever did was vote. That's it. I never volunteered, was never activist, none of that. And then one day I was looking at the representation I had in my county, very dissatisfied with it because the woman who was representing us didn't even live in our county. And I just prayed, God, if you make a way for me to do this, I'll do it. And then when it actually happened, it was really, I would say in one sense flattering and in another sense encouraging, because it is nice to have someone see what you have to offer and to really support you, in which they did. And it was a very good run the first time.
That's tremendous. Ken, after you got that bid, what were the next steps?
So the typical next steps in any state race, it's different for federal, but you're going to file with the county board of election. And that will have a deadline as to for which particular race you have to file a very small filing fee. Then you have to open a candidate bank account where people can make donations to your campaign. And then after that, it's off to the races with meeting people. The number one asset in any race is the number of people you can meet personally. Period. It is really that simple.
That's incredible. What did that look like for you, Ken? Or would you really classify your campaign as a grassroots campaign?
I felt like it was grassroots, because both in 2018, 2022, my campaign was had Democrats, Republicans, and Independents on it.
Okay.
So all three sides came together to support me. And then
That's
I also
incredible.
for
Let's highlight that for a minute because that I mean, when you first told me that, I'm like, wait, what? Because we see so much, right? I was, fighting across political lines and so much. So I just want to touch on that for a minute. What was that like to get support across all the aisles?
it was good. I mean, because it's like I find it really disconcerting that people would believe our country would be better if the other half of it was not there. I mean, I think that's odd. And then, it's also like weird because it's like, okay, someone has a different view to me doesn't mean I need to demonize them and they're going to destroy the world. Are there people I absolutely positively disagree with? Absolutely. But at the same time, I believe that we all really are fighting for the same things. I think we all want justice. We all want people to prosper. We want to be a land of
Right.
opportunity and freedom and a place where we continue to maintain the traditions that we've had. And so to be able to bring together all sides solidly and have them even speak out publicly that they were on my side, I was pleased because I believe that can be done. And that was one of the things I really wanted to accomplish.
Absolutely incredible. Ken, talk to us some more about that grassroots campaign. What did that look like for you?
Other than having people door knock for me, it was door knocking myself. Some people really like to attend events, and I think events are good. But my only issue with events is that there's a gazillion of them, and if you're at a decently sized event, most people will not know you're going to be there, and you can't meet everybody in the room. So I like to meet people where they're at, which is at home. And so now that people are working from home, oh man, it's a gold mine in my opinion for grassroots activity. And not only that, what I found interesting is that more people, I don't know, maybe because they're home all day, more people now than ever answer their door. And so I got to have so many face-to-face conversations. It was awesome. I enjoyed myself.
Ken, talk to us about the grassroots campaign that you ran.
Absolutely. I would say the key to any campaign is the number of people you can meet face to face as a candidate. Second key would be your supporters meeting someone face to face. So, what that looked like for us was going door to door. Like, it sounds old school, but it is, in my opinion, the easiest determining factor of support, yet it is the hardest in terms of time committal because it takes a
Right.
lot of time to do it. So, personally speaking, I spent most of my time meeting people face to face, door to door, having good conversations. And I felt like maybe it was the COVID era or something coming to an end. Maybe people were ready for a company because I had so many people open the door, invite me in, have
That's incredible.
conversations. It was nice.
I bet it was. And I gotta think that you probably just had some very incredible conversations from people from all walks of life. But I am curious, you can also run into some people that they're very angry. They're angry, just stuff going on and, maybe injustices or whatever it may be. How do you handle that when you're literally knocking on doors and folks are, kind of keyed up and just upset about what's happening in the community?
It's interesting. So we did somewhere over 10,000 doors, and that
Oh,
was
10th. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Wow.
thank you. Thank you.
Whew.
I think me and my kids did several thousand. I had one guy knock his whole district. We had another couple people do several hundred to a thousand. So, what's fascinating? In that several thousand, there were only three or four people who they just closed the door on us,
Okay.
and that was it. We actually, from door to door, did not have a single hostile conversation. Even
Incredible.
more fascinating, we only had one hostile interaction, and that was on voting day. But the person who was hostile with even his own party
Okay.
because he knew he was part of a sinking ship. So I count that as a one-off. But we actually had a very positive time, the whole, at least over here.
That's incredible. That's really interesting to hear. And you took your kids on a lot of the campaigning like that. What was that like for them to be a
They
part
had
of
a
it with you?
blast.
Yeah?
Yeah, we bond around fitness. So what we would do is, you know, I'd I'd offer them something like, okay, you guys do good, you can have a Gatorade afterwards, which of course they're gonna hustle for, right? And
That's
so
awesome.
we would I'd walk on the street and carry the material, and they would literally run door to door, one after each other as we walked, ring the doorbell, tell them to vote for my dad, or leave the material on
Oh
the
my
door.
gosh.
And so it was a lot of fun, and we got to do it together. I mean, that was the funnest part of it,
That's
was
so cool.
spending time together, being productive.
I love that too, that you tied it back to the fitness too, right? Because you all are such a great fitness family. And again, I highly encourage everybody to go back and listen to Ken's previous episode. It's such a good conversation and so much great stuff out of that. I imagine that, that's going to be something they're going to look back on for decades to come and really their whole life, and I'm sure just be an incredible memory with their dad. That's just tremendous. So you said just thousands and thousands of doors were knocked on, Ken. How many volunteers did you gather during this time?
Ooh, wow! I think at our height, somewhere between 50 to 70.
Wow.
And I only say that because at some point in time, you'll lose track.
Yeah.
You
Right.
just do, especially here. I mean, the objective is simple, and that is knock the city, like get to every
Okay.
door in the city. But then you'll have things where like you'll have people in the county where you like give them a box of signs and
Okay.
pamphlets and say, hey, go to your people, right? And then you might have someone to say, okay, hey, I can go to my neighborhood. And then you might have someone say, hey, I have friends who need signs. And then it just starts spinning out of
Wow, wow.
control, in sense
Yeah.
of you lose track of who's doing what. You just know people are.
Ken, so you did so much work, knocking on so many thousands of doors yourself, your children, all the volunteers. What other ways did you use to get the word out about your campaign?
Letters to the editor, to the Wilson Times, which is our local paper. It has a good readership, and I'm always passionate about, for those that are interested, because some people are not, about what it is I'd like to see accomplished and what it is we're facing as a nation. And
Right.
so that was a good way to get the word out. The two biggest things I got feedback from were people who got our flyers at their door, and then people who read our letters to the editor talking about what we were going to do and why. So that seemed to be very productive for us, in addition to social media.
Incredible. Ken, looking back at this time campaigning this past year, what would you say was the most difficult part about that process?
A campaign is a marathon. And I've always heard, it's the first couple miles and the last couple miles of a marathon that are the most brutal.
Yeah.
And I would agree. When you first start campaigning and you hadn't done it for a while, going door to door is like nerve wracking because you haven't really got the sense of the community yet, where they're at with that type of
Okay.
thing. And then like
Right.
after a month or two of doing that, you realize no one's bothered by you, so you feel okay doing it, even optimistic.
Okay.
And then the last month is absolutely nerve wracking because no matter how much work you've done, nothing matters until you get the numbers, bottom line. So that is the other part, is hard, is getting to the finish line and actually crossing the finish line. But it is a great sense of relief once you do it.
That's incredible. So let's talk about that, Ken. Take me through election day. Let's talk about election night. What can you tell us about that day?
Yeah, so election day, typically candidates will try to make it to all 29, well, all the polls in their city. For me, it was 29. Now,
You
there's no way
that's
I'm getting to
I was
29.
gonna say, like, like, how yeah, how does that work? That's incredible.
I don't think it's possible. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't even know how productive it is. So, what I did do was find the most valuable polls in terms of numbers and
Okay.
likely turnout. And that's where I stationed friends and family who wanted to work the polls for me. And then
Right.
I myself kind of parked myself at the largest poll where the people would be, which was, it just so happened to be my neighborhood. So I stayed there all day with my wife. Other than that, I would maybe go to places to bring some of my volunteers food and water or whatever else they needed, and then stay at the poll until it closes at 7:30. But we left maybe at like 5 or 6 so we can go to dinner.
Okay.
And then after The polls closed. The number is supposed to come in. Most states, counties are automated, but technology, you always got Murphy's Law,
Yeah.
right? Murphy's always going to
Right.
show up when
Yep.
things are inconvenient. And so, mm, out of the 29 polls, 16 came in by like 9 o'clock. There were still nine out. And by 10, it was obvious they weren't going to come in for something that happened.
Oh,
So at
jeez.
that point in time, I'm like, I don't care. I'm going home. I'm going to bed. And
Oh
so
my
I went
gosh.
home, went to bed, and then around 11:30, I got a call from the speaker of the house. He's like, "Congratulations!" I said, "What happened?" When I left, the numbers weren't in yet. He said, "No matter what happens from now, the numbers are such that you cannot lose." I'm like, "Sweet." All right, we did
Oh
it.
my gosh.
So I got the news around 11:30, and then finally around 1 in the morning, all the polls came in.
Ken, what was the feelings like in the moment when you received that phone call? You're home, you're in bed, time to call it a day, and you get that call from the Speaker of the House. What were the emotions in that moment?
What's interesting? So one of my goals in my PTSD journey was equanimity. It's actually a word I hadn't heard about in almost all my life. I don't think I've ever heard about it, but when I found about equanimity, it was acknowledging the pleasurable in the moment, also acknowledging the painful in the moment, but coming back to center. So in the moment, I was I was like relieved, really. Like it was over.
Yeah.
I was
Right.
happy, and I wouldn't say I was like through the roof. I would just say I felt like equanimable. Like I was so happy to be doing it. I was excited to be doing it, but my prayer through this was win or lose, that I would just enjoy it. Learning to enjoy the process instead of the product.
Ooh,
And I
yeah.
feel like that shift to processional enjoyment has just allowed me to enjoy more of every day in the moment, because I feel like when you get obsessed with the product, once you get it, now what? Right.
Yeah.
And so I would say it just really opened a door to more enjoyment. Like I love my job. I am not even in
Yeah.
office and I started working like a month ago. So I'm having a ball. So I would just say I was really more relieved than anything else, but also grateful to be able to be given that opportunity.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Thank you for talking to us about that, Ken. That's incredible. I want to switch gears here just a little bit, and I want to talk to you specifically, Ken, about veterans in office. And you kind of touched on this stuff in the beginning, right? Policymakers and stuff, and who's affected by these policies and what's happening. So, Ken, why do you believe veterans are good candidates for office?
I think veterans are good candidates for office because of practical experience and life experience. One of the things I really enjoyed about going to war with my brothers and sisters in arms is that there's a bottom line, and that bottom line is we're all together at the end of the day, and we need to realize that. I think that is often forgotten in the political realm and in the realm of all this rhetoric that we see going on in a
Yeah.
nation, and I think veterans see beyond that and are extremely practical while at the same time having a strong philosophical drive. And I feel like because veterans have already invested in the nation, they are more careful with what they do and why. They're more have more forethought, more forethought and insight into what they're doing. So I find veterans are just better leaders, in my opinion.
Looking back at, and they don't even necessarily need to be challenging moments, right, Ken? But just experiences that you had, your time in Afghanistan and everything. Do you lean back on any of those experiences to what you're doing now in office?
Absolutely. And it's interesting. So I feel like I'm going through officer candidate school again.
That's
But not
incredible.
only that, this is like a super much better version. And I'll give you an example. I had who was it? So we were going in our first day of orientation, and it was the services administrations officer, something like that. He runs the staff that works for us in essence. And he opens up to this to a freshman class. He's like, Thank you so much for everything you're doing. We really appreciate that the fact that you're here. You want to serve your country. Now, let me tell you all something. None of you are special. You're not doing anything groundbreaking. You're here, and then in a couple years you'll be gone. Someone else will take your place. Do you understand this? And
Oh,
I'm cracking up inside because some of my contemporaries are super upset at this message. But I'm
yeah.
like, man, after going through boot camp and OCS, I mean, tickle me with a feather, bro. You're not hurting my feelings at all. I mean, it was okay. I could care less because now that I've been through the fire of these military traditions,
Right.
I was not the least bit offended. So I feel like I'm prepared because of one being an officer in NCO has just given me experience that I believe helps me to understand the machine. The bureaucracy is very similar in the coordination of the execution of ideas. So I feel like I've been prepared for it.
Ken, why are you eager to serve on the Veterans Affairs Committee?
So the number one passion I have for Veterans Affairs is an initiative that that has been going, but I want to see it exponentially multiplied. And that is right now, we have uncovered that a lot of veterans were discharged with OTH, or in some cases, dishonorable discharges, because what we didn't know at the time was that they were undiagnosed for PTSD
Yeah, right.
and all the wounds of war. And so I had some people that I served with that happened to. And I think that's tragic because we shouldn't ask someone to go to war and then we don't do right by them by treating the thing war has caused. And
Yes.
so one of the reasons I'm passionate about being in the Veterans Affairs Committee is I want to turbocharge discharge upgrades. I know a whole lot of people who were wrongfully discharged. Again, not that they didn't do anything wrong, but that they were suffering from mental health conditions that we did not diagnose, nor did we treat. Therefore, the discharge is not just. And I'm looking to reverse as many of those as possible.
Oh my gosh, that definitely hits close to home, right? Because we all know extremely tragic stories about that. And for anybody that doesn't know, Ken, would you touch on what it means, for a veteran, for someone in our community to have discharges other than that honorable, what that does to a person?
Oh yeah. So the problem, my biggest issue with the OTH and even dishonorable is like it's like the lion's share of the benefits are gone, and even health benefits in some extent, which is like it makes no sense to go that far, especially considering the sacrifice that people made, and then not to mention when we're the service we ask them to perform is responsible for some of these issues. So the OTH, I just think, especially in the cases where we've sent someone to war, their friends were killed. Wounded, injured, whatever have you. We ask them to do things that later on they feel were unconscionable. Whatever the case is, if they were discharged with that, and like many veterans who've been sent into the system without real good mental health care or even physical health care, that's a tragedy. And so some of the guys I'm working with, what they'll be able to get is their VA benefits. They'll be able to get medicine. They'll be able to get physical help. They'll be able to get mental help. They will be able to get their disability because some of these people did go to war and did get hurt and they should be getting paid disability. They'll get their GI Bill. They'll get their state benefits. And so when I look at the opportunity to reverse a lot of these tragedies, to me, it is the one thing I feel I will measure my career by concern for veterans is how many vets can I get through this process successfully.
That's tremendous, Ken. I can't tell you how happy I am to hear that and to hear that that's a push for you. And I know I speak for many veterans when I say that. Ken, really at the end of the day, when you look at this service that you're embarking on, this new path of service, what is your main goal for this continued service?
Ooh, the main goal I would say is there are at least three areas where I'd like to see dramatic improvement. I would like to see dramatic improvement in the impoverished part of our city. I'd like to see performance increase for minority students in school, and then also low SES students, because those two categories tend to be at the bottom in almost everything society wise. And then lastly, I'd like to see veterans. I would like to see several thousand discharge upgrades. I mean, that sounds ambitious, but I don't think it is. I'd like to see several thousand discharge upgrades so that people who gave their all to our country should also get their country's all in return. So if I can do those three things by the time I'm out of office, my job will have been done.
That's incredible. Ken, I have one last question for you today. Could you speak to other veterans who are interested in pursuing a career in office? What would you say to them?
Oh, I would say your country still needs you to serve, and that as a result of what you've been through, you are more than qualified. And believe it or not, sometimes we look at the shine and the polish we see on TV, but what you'll discover in some cases is that you not only are more qualified and talented, you are more invested, and you have a lot to offer this nation. So I would say, please don't be intimidated. Please don't think you don't have what it takes. That's not true. And start pursuing the process. And if you do the work, you will be successful. That's it. You do the work, you will be successful, and people will be glad that you served again.
Those are pretty powerful words to end on, Ken. And, service runs deep in all of our blood, all of us veterans. Thank you so very much for coming on today, continuing to spread your light to our community, to your local community, to your great state. We're so excited to see all the great things that you do. We want to thank Ken for continuing to serve his community in such a powerful way. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in this week for another episode highlighting one of our incredible Catch a Lift veteran athletes. A special thank you to Ken for sharing your journey with us in this new endeavor. We were so excited to hear about it and to hear these words from you. Don't forget to join us every Wednesday live at 1 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for a chance to win Cal Swag and to chat with your brothers and sisters. If you liked today's episode, please be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and leave us a review on your favorite streaming service. Until next week, keep it real and stay Cal strong.